Welcome. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. This is our third town hall since this project began, and town halls are really important for us because we want to make sure that the citizens of Burlington, that you all have as much information as possible, and to be able to make an informed decision, and also to be able to give us feedback to understand what the questions are that are out there, and how we can be responsive to those as much as we possibly can. This meeting tonight is being streamed live on Facebook. It'll be on YouTube tomorrow. We'll sort of post it out and about so that folks here, obviously, thank you for being here. We appreciate you all being here today, and also it's available for anyone who's not here to see what's happening as well. And we're available if anyone who's not here has questions and wants to talk about anything. We are wide open to having those conversations, and we actually encourage and welcome and would like to have those conversations with you. And so tonight we are going to kick off with
introductions.
I want to thank Principal McBride and Director Reed for also being here tonight after a long school day. Also here, so if you have questions about their schools, their programs, you can talk to them. And quick housekeeping item, the escalator down is broken. So when you leave tonight, you're going to want to take the stairs, which are behind you, or the elevator, which is located to your back left.
Thank you, Principal McBride, for having us. We also have Lyle, our new Director of Property Services here. Hey, Lyle Smith. And Colby Skoglund. Hi, Colby. Good to see you. Teacher here at BHS, BTC. All right, so we're going to get started. We're actually going to kick off with a video. Then we'll introduce ourselves.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Who are you?
All right. Okay, so we're not going to do that again. I'm Tom Flanagan. I'm the Superintendent of Burlington Schools. Welcome again. Thank you for being here. And I'm going to have the team introduce themselves as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nathan Lavery. I am the Burlington School District Executive Director of Finance and Operations.
Jesse Beck, architect with Freeman French Freeman.
Marty Spalding, I'm owner of PCI Capital Project Management. I'm also the former facilities director.
So what we're going to do is walk through a presentation here. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of the project, where we are now, show you some of the most recent designs. Those are still, they get sharper and sharper. They're still a work in progress. We'll open up for a question and answer session after that, and then we're available afterwards to have any conversations with anybody. We have school board members here, and some of the members of the design team who are also a part of the project. So we're here to talk more informally after the Q&A. So brief history of the project is that in April, between April and August of 2022, we were working to complete a $70 million re-envisioning project. So we received funding for a $70 million project to essentially renovate the old high school to address accessibility, outdated learning spaces, and the failing mechanical systems. During that project, we learned about PCBs. We learned that PCBs were in the air as a part of the project. And after we learned that they were in the air, we had to close the high school. A really drastic measure for our community, but based on the feedback of the Environmental Protection Agency and the Department of Environmental Conservation, we did have to close the high school. And thankfully, we were able to find this spot as a temporary home to be in. As we were learning more about the PCBs, we started to learn that those PCBs, they come from specific areas of the construction. We knew right away that they were in the caulking around the windows, but as we then as we learned more, we learned that they were also in the glue underneath the tiling and had seeped about 3/4 of an inch into the concrete foundation underneath the tiling. They're in the walls, so they've seeped out of the wall, out from the caulking and in the windows, out into the walls, up to 2 feet around the walls, and they're also used in light ballasts, and so they're also in the ceiling. They're in the soil because they've seeped out into the soil, and they're in the air, which is where we found them. So essentially, you have a sort of an envelope that's encased in PCBs. And we made a decision at that point, after we learned sort of the full impact of the PCBs, that the building was no longer viable, knowing that there was already a $70 million commitment that the citizens of Burlington made to update the building. Now we had a building that essentially was totaled. There was, if you look at some walls on the exterior, where if you were to look at the windows and think 2 feet out from the windows where PCBs were in the concrete blocks, there would be no more wall left. And so essentially it became really clear to us over time that there was no remediating or fixing sort of the old building. One thing of note that's important is that the $70 million bond, we did not borrow we didn't borrow those funds, or we didn't utilize those funds. We utilized $4 million of those funds only, and that was for the part of the project that we got to where we had to stop. And we either didn't borrow, we didn't borrow half of the remainder, and we gave back what we didn't, what was borrowed and not used. So essentially, the $70 million, $4 million of that was used. The rest of it is as if it was never borrowed. And I just wanted to clarify that because that's a question that comes up, and it's been a little tricky to explain, but hopefully I did it there. But if not, happy to answer questions about that. So then that brings us to more recent history, which is that the school board and the district did a pretty thorough engagement process with our design team in looking at sites across the district that could be appropriate for a high school. We looked at many sites, I forget the exact number, 20 plus sites, and learned both through feedback from the community. We did a community survey and got community input on sites, but also through the work with our design team, that Institute Road was the best site, also would be the least complicated and least expensive site for us to build a high school on. And that was great because it also provides the campus and the campus feel and a lot of the things the community told us they really wanted to make sure were a part of a new high school or of a high school. And so after we chose the location, we then, the design team developed 5.5 designs. And those 5.5 designs were presented to the school board. We got community feedback on those designs. And then we ultimately decided, and the community feedback told us option C was the best option. The board and we all agreed with that decision. And that option C was also the least expensive option of the 5 options. So just to sort of emphasize the fact that we have been from the very beginning making decisions that have the least impact as possible on taxpayers, because we know that this is a big project, an important project, and also one that we have to really balance the impact on taxpayers and the need for a high school. So we're really working hard to do that. And we also think that option C is a great option because it's energy efficient, it is contained, it sits nicely on the site, it's connected to the woods and to the lake and to the and to the bike path, and so there's a lot of sort of connectivity and access there that we feel really good about, and it's also a campus looking out on the fields, and so you'll see a little bit more of that as we move along. As we were entering into this, we've also been raising money. So we began working with Leonine Public Affairs, who supported our efforts around the weighted pupil, where the school board really took a lead with a number of other school boards to advocate for the state to change the funding formula so that Burlington, moving forward, starting in 2025, will have a more equitable funding formula, which will also mean that the tax impact will not be as much as we're currently projecting, but we are not positive exactly the impact yet, so we're going with just the numbers that we're certain about at this point. But Leonine helped us with that, and now they're also helping us with fundraising. And so we're really committed to doing that fundraising. And we also have decided to reduce some of the cost of the overall building. A great opportunity came up that allows us to move part of our Burlington Technical Center, about half of our Burlington Technical Center, to the airport. And we've been working with the city and the airport and some of the partners like Beta at the airport to build part of our technical center at the airport and have that be related to aviation. We already have 2 aviation programs, so it includes those 2 aviation programs, plus our advanced manufacturing, our pre-tech programming, and perhaps our auto program as well. So that all happened at a perfect time. We're excited about it, and it's also important, I think, for the citizens of Burlington to know that about half of our students are about half of the students at Burlington Technical Center are Burlington High School students, and so we felt it was appropriate to keep half of the program space in the current high school and include that in the bond, and remove half of the program space to the airport. And it also just worked because we had this burgeoning partnership that we're really excited about. And so we're going to be working on 2 projects related to the high school as we move forward. We also have partnered with the Burlington Students Foundation and are beginning to raise private philanthropy in addition to the federal and state funding that Leonine is helping us to identify where we do think we will be eligible for significant funds. And so that sort of brings us to the closest endpoint to today, which is that the school board approved the $165 million bond request, and the city council, along with the mayor, unanimously approved. The city council unanimously approved our bond placement on the ballot after a lot of work with the mayor and the city council, a lot of collaborative partnership to make sure that we were all in sync and aligned on the need here and that it really made sense to them. So we have an updated site plan. This is a relatively new site plan. You may have seen it if you've been looking on the website. All of the information and materials that we have are also on the website. They're on the landing page there. You can link in the Learn More section. And this just shows you the aerial view of the high school and sort of how it sits. And what it really illustrates is, if you were to look at the last slide with the previous high school, there's a part which was the other half of Burlington Technical Center that is no longer a part of that design. But you see how it sits nicely on the land, close to the forest, and sort of connected in many ways. And so we wanted to show you some of the design elements. You saw them as you saw the video in the beginning. This is Institute Road coming down into Institute Road. We're really excited about the opportunities that present themselves with the way that this design shows up now. You've got on your right the window facing North Avenue, so you have sort of a prominent structure that is appealing on North Avenue and really signifies the importance of an institution of learning and a place where we collectively educate our children. And then you also have an ease of access through Institute Road. into not a turnaround, what's it called? Anyway, a road that goes off there to the main entrance, which is in sort of further down on that site. And then this is the backside of the high school, where on the north entrance, not the backside, it's definitely not called the backside. And the north entrance is where there's a lot of the parking. So instead of having the parking in the front, the parking is now in the back, which is a better design. We're happy about that design element, and also allows for accessibility. Our old high school is not accessible for individuals with disabilities. It's a known problem that we've had and that we knew we needed to address. This allows for ease of access from the parking lot and for accessibility, and into another significant entrance that again signifies the importance of this place as an institution of learning, and brings you into a central commons area that I'll show you in a second. This is a concept of the classroom. What you can see is flexibility of seating. You see light, and you see space for students to both be seated and have flexibility. And so what this really illustrates is, even in a standard kind of size and shape of classroom, we are going to be building in elements of flexibility kind of throughout our design. This is the commons. So when you came in the north entrance, you saw the north entrance or the south entrance, they both come into this common area. What we heard from students really loudly, and also from families and the community, is the importance to have places for the community and also for students to gather. Students really felt like they needed space to be together in a way that is, of course, structured. Our time with students is always structured, and we also need to provide some flexibility and space for students to collaborate and to eat in spaces like this that have light and are comfortable and welcoming, and that's really important. One of our priorities in our strategic plan is to have schools that are welcoming, and schools where students belong and their well-being is cared for, and this kind of illustrates that in our design. This is a visual of the Learning Center, what we used to call the library, kind of like what we're sitting in now. Again, you see light, the importance of light, particularly because we're in Macy's now where we don't have light. That really showed up in a major way for students and staff, the importance of light. And it's also something that we know is important for a school of the future. We have an auditorium. We want to, obviously, there's an auditorium, but we wanted to highlight the importance of the auditorium as a shared space, as one of these spaces, this and the gym, and other spaces where we want to make sure that the building is a place where the community is also community who doesn't have students in the building are welcome and have use and access to the space, so that it is an asset for the entire community, in addition to the students who attend the school and the staff who work with them. Outdoor space was a huge, important piece for students, and so you can see the courtyard here. There are also 2 specifically designated outdoor learning hubs in addition to this, and we've built design for outdoor learning and outdoor space kind of throughout the building, and that was responsive to what we really heard from our students and our educators. And so with this, I'm going to kick it over to Jesse. Jesse's going to talk us a bit through the floor plans and some of the details here, and we'll kind of do a high level. Again, we'll be around for questions later.
I'm going to stand so I don't laser point somebody in the face. So Tom did a great job teeing up the architecture from the outside and some of the images from the inside. So I'll just show you where those images fall in the plan. So the heart and soul of this new school will be 2 levels of space in the center, and that's where you have the north entrance for a certain amount of parking, about 200 stalls of parking on the hill, and then the south entrance, which will utilize the 144 stalls across Institute Road to the south side. So those existing parking spaces will be fully utilized. At the same time, we have a BTC dedicated entrance on this lower level because we have a full grade change of 14 feet, full story level grade change. So that allows for entrance to the Burlington Technical Center. Those programs that we're going to be keeping on the site are design and illustration, digital media, health sciences, homeland security, and criminal justice, and intro to healthcare. So those take place on multiple levels on the west end of the building in these spaces. Let's go to the next level, please. So the next level up, which is the north entry, south entry, you come up through this grand stair in the commons. On either side, you have the 750-seat auditorium, which also has a balcony fed off the next level up, and a full-size gymnasium similar to what you have now, but the use of that gymnasium is such that we added a third station. So this is will be a wall that can be moved, opened and closed, to allow for a community gymnasium or a full grand situation for graduation or those opportunities where you need more seating than what you can fit in the auditorium. Classroom wing is off to the east. Next. So once again, the commons is the central element, multi-storied with a opening that is skylit, so natural daylight will come down through the center of the school. This is the learning commons that Tom showed an image of before, with the classroom off to the east. And then the fourth floor plan, or the fourth classroom plan, surrounds the courtyard space, which you saw the image. So bringing daylight into all of the interior spaces was very important to the students. And in fact, here we have an outdoor space on the roof so that people can get outdoors for teaching and also to view the playing fields for sports events. The roof plan just sort of reinforces that we're thinking sustainability so that we have these green zones for rainwater capture, for stormwater capture. We have solar panels in as many places as we can put them on flat roofs, and there will be off-site solar opportunities as well to help electrify the school for the systems. That's really the quick run through of the floor plans.
All right, thanks, Jesse. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the financial implications of the proposed building and the bond associated with it. So as folks have probably read, we're asking the community to support a $165 million bond, or that's the question on the ballot. And we've done estimates of what that will mean to taxes in Burlington. It's important to note that a few things when we talk about tax estimates. One is that we have to make a lot of assumptions about a number of variables that go into Vermont's system. But one of the other things that we assumed here was that we would need to borrow the full $165 million. However, as Tom mentioned, we are committed to doing everything we can to reduce the amount of borrowing we actually need to take advantage of through accessing federal and state programs that can relieve costs to us, as well as doing private fundraising. So I think it's very likely that in the end we will not borrow the full $165 million, and that means that we won't actually incur the full increases that are estimated here. But again, these are all estimates, and we felt it was important to show people what the implications would be of borrowing the full $165 million. So there's a tax rate increase. It's a little over 15.5%, and there are estimates of what the taxes would, what the increase would be, both for folks who are paying the education property tax based solely on the value of their property, and also for folks who are who get the benefit of the education income, the credit based on your income. And I'm going to go into a little more detail here. So this chart is just intended to illustrate the fact that we're not going to borrow all of the money at once, which means that the tax implications won't be felt all at once. This is a multi-year project, and so we expect borrowing to take place over probably 3, possibly even 4 years. And that means that the impact, the feeling of the tax increases will phase in step by step. And this chart illustrates how over 3 years of borrowing, you go relatively modest increase in the first year, and then you have subsequently larger increases until you reach that full state of borrowing where you are making the repayment, and the tax rate increase is about 15.5%. We've done some charts. This one allows people to estimate the impact based on the value of their house site for those who are not getting an education income credit. And then we have a couple charts.
Can you give the high end and the low end of those?
Sure, it's hard to read. So this chart goes from $300,000 house site value with a kind of monthly estimated increase of $54 up to a $700,000 house site value with a monthly estimated increase of $127. Similarly, we did some estimates which are even more complicated, but they are an effort to give people who are income sensitized a sense of what it would mean for them. And so in these charts, which we are just publishing today and will be up on our website, you find roughly where your income level lies and roughly where your home value lies to figure out what the annual increase would be in this case, or we also broke it down again to a monthly level. And it's important to understand that those who get an education tax credit, that credit is based on a combination of your home value and your income, and that it phases out a little bit before $140,000. So we put the $140,000 column on there to illustrate what it would be. Essentially, you're not getting a credit at that point, and those numbers match up with the previous slide. So just to let folks know a little more of the detail about how we have already made an effort to reduce the cost of this project to taxpayers. We've really tackled it in both directions. We've taken steps to reduce the cost of the project. Tom talked about, for example, the decision to relocate some of the tech center programs to the airport. That's going to bring the cost of this project down, which of course is helpful. But we've also been working hard to identify other sources of funding, non-taxpayer, bonded funding, that we can bring to the project to further reduce the pressure on taxpayers. We've already identified $5 million of existing funds that we have access to, plus $10 million of federal relief funds, COVID relief funds. Those are the ESSER funds that we can dedicate to this project. And we've also determined that we can reallocate $10 million of existing authority, capital bonding authority, to go toward this project. So there's $25 million of funds to reduce the burden on taxpayers, and also a decision to relocate the portion of the tech center. And we're able to do that in large part because we received a $10 million federal earmark through the efforts of Senator Leahy to help support the relocation of the tech center at the airport. So for folks who are wondering, are we just going to have to spend that same money at the airport? The answer is no. We've got a major source of funds here through, again, the support of Senator Leahy and a congressional earmark. But we're not done there, right? We're going to continue to work on this. We're going to continue to aggressively pursue federal and state resources. There are a number of programs out there. They can be related to environmental cleanup. There's obviously a major investment that we need to make in cleaning up the site because those PCBs haven't gone away. There's also other funding sources that are potentially available to us to do things like improve the stormwater on the site, invest in the energy efficiency. We're going to be partnering with Burlington Electric Department. They're going to give us a list of incentives that we can potentially pursue to make this building as efficient as possible and potentially reduce the cost of those systems. And finally, we have that partnership with the Burlington Students Foundation is an effort to support the private philanthropy that we're going to be pursuing. So we're off to a good start there, but we are committed to doing more in our effort to ultimately reduce the amount of borrowing we need to do, which consequently reduces the pressure on taxpayers.
So with that, we have the updated timeline for you, which is moving toward a 2025 move-in date. That's why we call the project BHS BTC 2025. Ballots are mailed out soon. So the last day that they're mailed out is on September 26th. We're anticipating that they'll land in people's mailboxes on the 28th or so. We're going to have another town hall on October 21st at the Miller Center, and then the bond vote on November 8th. That all leads us toward the beginning of demolition, which begins in January or maybe in December. And we're currently working to negotiate our winter sports and winter activities now, and have identified spaces through the really hard work of the BHS administrative team and our athletic director to make sure that that can happen. And then construction would begin in June of 2023. So we have an aggressive timeline. I think it's important for everybody to understand that the timeline depends on the successful vote or the passing of a bond on November 8th. And I think that it's just important that people sort of understand that, and also understand the amount of funding that we have already brought to the project outside of new borrowing that Nate just mentioned. It is significant, and it's been a real team effort. Actually, the earmark was solidified through our aviation teacher, who runs Moses Daly, who runs a great program, and the BTC team. So it's been a team effort to get to where we are. We are at the lowest possible price, we believe, and we know that there's significant federal and state funding out there for this project that we think we're eligible for in the current fiscal year. But those programs are not all up for us to apply for yet. And we also will be doing significant advocacy with Leonine Public Affairs over the next few months as we ramp up for the next cycle in Montpelier. And so we're going to be pushing hard for construction aid. There's $32 million of PCB remediation aid in the current budget. And so that won't all be for us, but there's funding for us to seek. So we really are showing you sort of the most conservative numbers of what this could possibly be, and haven't even factored in the per pupil, the weighted pupil, which really significantly I believe, will significantly change the overall tax impact. But we want to make sure we're really clear and transparent on what it is now. But also want you to understand that we're going to be working as hard as we can to get that number down as much as possible. And we think there are clear paths to do that. So with that, we'll take questions, and then after we'll be here for to talk and answer additional questions that may not be asked in this bigger forum. And our design team is here to also be able to talk specifically about the designs. So with that, we'll open it up. Yes. Oh, yeah. So because we're streaming, we're going to ask if folks, if you're comfortable, come up to the table here. It's not mic'd for us, so you have to still project for the room, but this will bring it in so that people on Facebook Live can hear it. I should have said that before the question. It's actually up here at the table, Meredith. Yeah.
I just have a design question. So talk like this?
That's perfect. Thank you.
So when you were showing the designs and the floors and the classrooms, the space in the middle, is that like a light coming in there, or
Yep.
that's not a classroom, is it?
No, it's an open courtyard to the sky.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yep.
That was all I had. Thanks.
That was one thing that everybody really liked about all of the options.
Right,
It's the
okay.
courtyard.
Right. Thank you.
Other questions?
I have a couple of different questions. First one is the architect. I'm wondering what the setback of the east facade of the building is from North Avenue.
Do you remember those numbers, Joe or Randy?
I'm thinking it's over 200 feet, correct?
Yeah, I was going to say about 200 feet.
Question about the setback of the proposed building?
Yes.
Facade?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's in the neighborhood of 200 feet.
Okay. And my second question is, how much of the same facade is above the grade level of North Avenue?
We have a 65-foot height limit on this site, and so at the highest point, which isn't right up against the road, its back is 63 feet.
Okay, but, so my question is, in other words, the existing structure sits down lower than North Avenue. The design for the new structure appears to be a little bit closer to North Avenue and taller, or maybe the same height. But I'm just wondering, you know, if I'm standing on the sidewalk on North Avenue and looking at that facade, am I going to be looking at the, you know, the ground, not the ground floor, I guess, but the first floor, or the second floor, or the third floor?
Can we put the image? We have an image in here which might help you. But it's relatively a 4-story building off grade, off the sidewalk.
This one?
No, we had one. That's it. So off that patio is 3 stories of building.
Okay, but,
Here,
so is the patio on the same,
Right here.
Same level?
That's roughly the same level as the sidewalk up 200 feet away
right,
on
but,
North
but,
Ave.
so my question is the patio on the same grade as North Avenue, or is it lower?
Roughly, yes.
So from North Avenue, there are 3 stories that are
Yes.
going to be higher than the
Yes.
grade of North Avenue?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
200 feet back.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I have a couple of questions about the bond. The first question is, the bond from 2017 or 2018 was for $70 million. It was a 30-year bond. So this ask is for $165 million and a 20-year bond. So I'm just curious why, looking at a 20-year bond instead of a 30-year bond, if this is truly going to be a, 60 to 100-year lifespan building.
Yeah, good question. And we modeled 20 years based on conversations that we had with the city's financial director, who's kind of the expert in bonding for our community. But we may end up going 30 years. And in fact, we may end up having a combination because we're going to borrow over multiple years. So we could have a 20-year bond 1 year and a 30-year bond another year, depending on a combination of like the market conditions at the time. There's also an inherent trade-off whenever you choose term length, right? Just like a home mortgage, the longer term tends to reduce the cost, the annual cost, but it ends up increasing the overall amount that we pay in interest, and therefore the overall cost to taxpayers in a longer time period. It also means that you're paying back money for another 10-year period. You still have that debt on your city and your school district's financial statements, which means that it can be an obstacle to doing any other projects in the future. So there's consideration, and both approaches have merit. And I think when it comes to actually issuing the bond, it'll be, we'll have discussions about that. We'll be looking at the market with the city to figure out which approach makes the most financial sense for the community.
And we've been talking to the city a bit in the past couple of days, because this question came up at a recent NPA and sort of a couple of days before then. So that's why it's helpful for us to have these conversations, because these types of questions come up. And I think it's just important to know that we can still make a decision about the length of the bond. And we're going to do that in collaboration with the city, based on feedback we're hearing from you all about what, and the market conditions.
And my next question is in looking at the potential impacts on the tax bills, your assumption is that it's going to be a 20-year bond at 3.5%. And I'm assuming that that's just that's just a figure that really no one can predict what rates are going to be available in 6 months or a year or 2 years or 3 years. So they could be significantly higher, or they could be, this whole rate increase could be transitory.
Yeah, we don't know. That's a good point. Nobody knows for sure what interest rates are going to be 2, 3, 4 years down the road. So again, the estimates are based on the best available information at the time. Not to get too far in the weeds, but when it comes to issuing these bonds, it's not like when we go to the bank to get a mortgage and they tell us what the rate is. You essentially create a package, you sell it. So you have a certain ability to price them to offer an interest rate, but that impacts the way the amount of money you get in return. So I think 3.5% is a kind of reasonable estimate for right where we are right now and what the market looks like. But you're absolutely right that none of us can predict with 100% confidence what the interest rates will be in the future. Higher, lower, could be a combination of both, depending on the year in which we borrow.
Well, I'm assuming that if the bond ask passes the voters, that the project will go through regardless of what the interest rates are.
Yeah, I think the intent would clearly be, at that point, we would go and build the new high school.
Okay, thank you. One more question is, I've been following this as well as I can, and the $5 million which you identify as budget savings and surplus had previously been described as a $1 million a year surplus that could be used to offset some of the cost of the project. So, I have a hard time understanding how an entity that goes to the taxpayers every year with a budget can put in $1 million surplus or project having $1 million surplus for the next 5 budgets.
Yeah.
So, why are you asking the taxpayers to pay, $5 million over 5 years and then $165 million, plus interest over 20 years?
Yeah, so there's a couple answers to that. First of all, to take just the general question about anatomy of a surplus, if you will. So the Burlington School District's budget, when you factor in all the types of funds we have, is roughly on the order of $100 million a year. So if you think of it in those terms, $1 million is essentially 1% of your total budget. I think, generally speaking, the school district's shown the type of careful, conservative financial management that means we can usually achieve that on an annual basis. There's no guarantee that in any specific year we'll do it, but I think over a series of years, we have developed a track record that's achievable. And at this point, we also have already achieved some of that. Over the past year, we've already set aside about $1.5 million from prior year surpluses, so we're well on our way toward achieving that already. So we don't have the full $5 million to go from here. We've already made a dent in it.
But I think it's a fair question. I think it's something that we wrestled with as well, and we've been able to put aside some funding already, and some of that has to do with where we are in coming out of the pandemic. There's been a lot of federal aid flowing through the district, and that's going to dry up. And so we think that, plus we've had challenges staffing, and we're coming out of that now too. But we've been able to achieve a chunk of that savings already, and so we believe that over time we can spread that out to bring some more funding to the overall project through that surplus. But we also understand that there can be legitimate questions about that strategy.
Yeah, one thing I'll just add, because maybe this is more to your point, is what we haven't done is increase the budget with the intent to pay for that, right? We're relying on, as Tom mentioned, these other factors, right? When we can identify, for example, federal funds to pay for something that we don't have to use our local dollars for, that saves us money in the budget, and that's what helps generate a surplus, as an example. If we have a vacant position, it's not filled, that could end up being surplus funds. So we haven't actually increased our budget by $1 million a year just to put it toward the high school. And maybe that was to your point.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hello. I just have one question on, my name's Dan Cunningham. On the site construction, when you get into the project, is there consideration for the possibility of delay from soil and site remediation issues with the state? Because it sounds like to stay on that 2025 timeline, you need to really start next June.
Yep, I can answer that. So, once the district actually landed on option C, which was to build the new building on the existing footprint, as opposed to some of the other options we're building outside of that footprint, allowing the district to continue to use that, what they have been using as a building up until now, we really identified that we needed to fast track that demo process. So right now, we currently have a RFQ out soliciting contractors to demo and bait that building. We're anticipating to award that contract shortly after the bond vote and start that work in January. We also know it's going to take roughly 30 weeks to demo the existing building, so that brings us about to mid to late July, which is the same time frame that we're going to start the construction. The soil remediation will happen, throughout the construction process.
Do you see regulatory risk on the soil testing and?
I'm not sure I'm following your question,
Like
but
what
what
happens if the state says we're not happy with the arsenic levels or the PCB levels?
So we've been in constant communication with the state since we moved out of the building, since we identified the high levels of PCB. There's also been extensive testing of the site, enough so that what we've called, we've delineated the areas of contamination. So the state, required a certain amount of testing to delineate those areas, so that we know already what the state's going to require us to remove.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Thanks, Dan.
I have one more question.
Go for it.
And it's really not, it's kind of in your bailiwick, but not totally. But, so I live on North Avenue, and the state of the pavement is very bad. And I'm not sure what the city's plan is in terms of when they're going to redo North Ave, but I'm pretty sure they're planning on doing it sometime in the near future. So I'm wondering if there's been any coordination with the city about the effect of 3 years or 2 years and 9 months of heavy trucks going back and forth on North Avenue, and what that's going to do to the quality of the pavement in that time. And hopefully, I would hate to see North Avenue repaved and then have, however many months of trucks going by and carrying debris and everything else. So I don't expect you to answer that, but
Well, we don't have a concrete answer. We can say that we have been in conversations with the city about that. We actually have a memorandum of understanding about working with the city, and during those discussions, we talked about those right-of-way issues, the roads, both North Avenue and Institute Road, are also going to receive, a significant amount of construction vehicular traffic during that period. So I don't know, we don't know yet exactly what the city's plan is, but I would say they're well aware of that issue, and I think, as you pointed out, the last thing they want to do is, put down a fresh coat of pavement and then a year or two later have it all torn up by predictable construction. So I feel confident that they're aware of that, and they're going to kind of coordinate that with us, and that we have been having those conversations at a general level, although not specifically about a timeline.
so you're on it.
We're on it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think the other thing with the MOU, I think that it's important for folks to know, is that we've committed in the MOU to the mayor and the city council that we are going to continue to aggressively seek funding for this project beyond what we've already sought. And so we're not trying to our intention is not just to get to the bond and then start building without really aggressively continuing the fundraising. And we've committed to that in a memorandum of understanding that we've signed off on with the city council. So we're really, truly committed to that. And I think the weighted pupil is going to play a role. The weighted pupil, the change in the weighted pupil is going to allow us to offer better services to students at a lower cost. And that's always what it was meant to do. But the citizens of Burlington have also been paying for high levels of service already, and the weighted pupil will offset some of that. So there are a number of different pieces with fundraising and the weighted pupil that I think are going to significantly offset the overall tax impact once it comes down to it.
Hello.
Hello.
I was wondering, with the opportunity for a new high school, what thoughts sort of went into security or flow of egress? Like, would that entail just mechanical locks or any sort of electronic locking system so you could lock the building if need be? And I know students were excited for a large amount of light, which would mean glass, but was any thought put into that? Like, unfortunately, like, we need to think of things like this, and we have an opportunity to build a new school. I hate to be the one to talk about it, but
No, it's important to talk about. It's our number one responsibility. And I think in some ways, the design of the high school itself is much more easily, where it's much safer than sort of our current setup at the old building. Just because of the control that you can have around entrances and exits. And buildings these days are built, high school buildings, school buildings are built with that in mind. And so it's much more a part of the design than it was in 1964-3 when the old building was built. But Jesse, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, we've built into the design and the layout of the floor plans some of those features to help protect the students inside. Number of entries, we've really minimized the number of entries. They will be locked, all locked from the outside after, coming and going in the evenings.
With electronic locks.
With electronic locks.
yes,
We will have a security camera system, which will be fairly extensive. We've made sure that the entries that are open have adult supervision, like the offices and monitoring during the times when they are open. So if there are any incidents, they can be reported right away. The school footprint is very compressed, so you can see all the way around the school, whereas before, all those buildings stacking up the hill, no sight lines. So there's some inherent things that we've been doing that fall along the lines of today's modern schools.
and then one last thing. It being Vermont, I see flat roofs, and I'm sure they've come a long way, and you probably built plenty of them. But that was just, is that mainly for the ability to have solar panels, or was it more of an
It's
aesthetic?
a couple of things. I live in a house with a flat roof.
Okay.
Some
Yeah.
say it insulates with the snow on top, but yeah, it's economical to do a flat roof on such a large footprint building, because then if you pitch it, you've got
Yeah,
these
you spread it.
long, large empty spaces. So it's economical to do flat roofs. And of course, it does provide the areas for solar panels, to collect, and the green roof systems for stormwater.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of things, and it's prevalent in large building footprint schools like this.
Okay, thank you.
And there's also, we're building the building so that it will be net zero ready. So it's going to be highly energy efficient, but also, the solar panels we envision over time, on that roof.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I mean, I think just one other thing I would add that I think is important to understand. One of the benefits that we have not attempted to quantify, but we're very confident will be realized when we build a new school like this, is it's going to be less expensive to operate it. So on a year-over-year basis, this school, it's going to be more efficient. It's going to reduce costs that way. The materials and the design internally should facilitate better maintenance and cleaning and all those little things that add up to the cost of a school that we don't really think about, this is going to work way better for us than what we were spending on the campus that's currently up at Institute Road.
Hi. When my daughter was at BHS, one of our 5 children, she broke her foot, and she had to go upstairs and downstairs into 7 buildings or something. And you talked about it being handicapped accessible. How is that going to be done?
Yeah, it's essentially a 4-level school, and we have 3 elevators that are placed in zones where they have easy access. We also have multiple large stairwells that feed the entire school. So between the elevators and the accessibility of the stairs, and it's all flat floors. So no more ramps,
And only one building to go to.
one
right.
building to go to.
What's going to happen to the buildings that come down as far as what's going to be done with the land? Because that's quite a bit of land after the buildings are demolished.
Yeah, I think we're trying to regreen as much space as we can. We did talk about additional solar capacity to try to get to net zero. So some of the uphill portions of the site where the buildings were that are clear could be a good home to additional solar panels. Access to the Arms Forest, people have expressed interest in being able to park up there and have access to the trails. So we think it as a huge, large site. But once you start redesigning and placing the proper drop-off zones, like the drop-off loop in the front, you provide those outdoor classroom spaces. People wanted some outdoor spaces, which are shown in this plan. The amount of parking and drop-off on the north side of the building, solar, the wood chip plant stays and gets repurposed, and then access to the Arms Forest, the site's taken.
And all the athletic fields will remain as they are now?
Yes.
Are they being used now?
Yes, yep. We had a
Have a
game
lot of
today.
buses running back and forth to do that
Yeah.
here.
Yes, buses and cars back and forth, and bikes and, all kinds of transit back and forth.
Yeah, everything south of Institute Road stays pretty much as it is.
And as you know, it's that was one of the reasons the site was so desirable for the community. It's such a great campus with the school on top and the fields below. And it's been a place that has been a source of joy for our community, even though this has worked okay, missing sort of the opportunity to all be together, both in a pandemic and outside of your school. Check out the banners as you walk out. We've got a bunch of banners from the past couple of years.
I bet. And what happens at it's been years since I've been to the athletic field, but could a handicapped person get down to the football field, for instance, to watch a game with a
Yes.
wheelchair?
Yes.
There's a ramp.
Yep.
There's a
there are
ramp there
ramps
now.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we'll stick around a little bit, or we'll stick around as long as anyone wants to talk after this. I'm gonna, our school board chair, Claire Wool, is here. Claire, do you mind coming up and closing us out? Claire's been running around town this evening, supporting multiple school events.
Claire, just make sure you use one of the mics. You can be there, you can come up here if you want.
We have been very fortunate. It's the first time in 3 years we've been able to have open houses at our schools. And tonight was Hunt Middle School's open house. And tomorrow night is all of our elementary school open houses in Edmonds as well. So we had BHS open house last week. First time in 3 years. There are families that have never stepped foot in Macy's before to see their children's classroom. So we are very happy that we are able to connect with voters. We don't take for granted that if your students are attending the public schools that you're a definite yes for the bond vote. So we have to ask you for your vote and educate you and answer any questions as school board members. That's our volunteer duty to do that we've chosen. And we're very grateful that the city councilors and the mayor have supported this bond so that we can work in partnership as a city. Being a host city to our state university, we look forward to, over the next 5 weeks now, mobilizing as all Burlingtonians to really show a sense of strength, the importance of this hardship, first and foremost, but the necessity of a high school. So this is a need and not a want. And our needs have been identified over the last 10 years of an incredibly inefficient building, and hearing about your daughter, a building that was never accessible or renovated to be accessible. And we believe, and I'm very grateful for Superintendent Flanagan's leadership, as well as all of our leadership team, and the fiscal responsibility that we have maintained over the last 5 years to be at this point in time to really communicate very clearly to our fellow citizens what is at stake here and why there is a need right now, and why the timing of this cannot be delayed, because it will only get more expensive, and that we're in this incredible lucky space. Very, very lucky we are where we are, but this is not ours, and we own that Institute Road property. So this temporary space is temporary. It was built as a department store. That being said, our goal as school board members and the district cannot campaign for the vote, so it is our job to meet all of you tonight, mobilize, educate your friends and families and neighbors on the importance of this, and empathize with the concern and costs. And we can do that over the next year. We're committed to, as long as it takes, to sit front and center with the governor, sit front and center with our state federal delegation, Bernie, Senator Leahy, soon to be someone else, and Congressman Welsh, and tell them that we need funding. Again, I'm long-winded, but there was a moratorium put on construction aid 14 years ago. It's a great state to live in. We're very lucky. We all have been able to enjoy Vermont, but it is a finite population. So the moratorium on construction aid eliminated the state helping districts like ours and throughout the state 30%, 40% of a project like this. So having it fall on our shoulders alone is something that we have to take to the state and to the federal delegation and ask for their assistance. And as Superintendent Flanagan emphasized that tonight, as well as Executive Director Lavery, we are just beginning those, I wouldn't say fight because I want to be cooperative, but we are entitled to funds that are already earmarked. Our school is shut down, and the state will have to work with us on solidifying those funds. So thank you. My goal tonight is to say we ask people to sign in, and those online can reach out to us and the superintendent and be a part of our mobilizing team to help us put lawn signs in your front yard and help us with door-to-door. We're a grassroots organization. We're not spending money on a large campaign except our lawn signs. And the lawn signs say, "We need a high school," simply stated. So thank you for your time tonight, and thank you for affording me the opportunity to speak to all of you, and very appreciative of those that are here tonight to become informed and ask those questions. We rely and we're partners with you in this. So thank you for being here tonight.
All right, and that's it for tonight, but we'll all be here. I'll be here, Nate will be here, the design team is here to take any questions, have any conversation. Thank you. Have a great night.